Welcome to another episode of WTF Cinema.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to WTF Cinema. Today, we've got a little something special for you. It's a largely forgotten film by a very well-known director. Also, a pair of well-known writers. This is something that all of them wish that they no longer had on their resume. From a director who brought us laughs and scares, and now he's going to bring us groans of pain. This is Sam Raimi's Crimewave. Now, to be fair, this is supposed to be a farcical comedy, so there are elements that are over the top, because that's the joke. And WTF Cinema is about attacking things that aren't internally narratively consistent, not things that are just, well, that would never happen in real life. So I'm going to try not to focus too much on the things that thematically are appropriate to the movie, and instead focus more on the stuff that's just awful. There's plenty of reasons to dislike this movie. We open our film with a group of nuns racing on their way to the prison to stop an execution. Now, I'm an 11th generation Texan, so the idea of anybody being against the death penalty makes this a comedy already for me. Our inmate is sentenced to Hudsucker State Penitentiary, which reminds me of a Coen Brothers Raimi film I would so much rather be watching.
You know, for kids.
As our main character Ajax is being walked to the electric chair, he tries to explain to the jailers who are dragging him there that he's innocent and what really happened. Did you not have a trial? Because that's kind of when you do this. You tell your lawyer, here's what happened, and then he tries to prove that you did not commit the crime. Or at least prove that there's reasonable doubt. Instead, you're just going to tell your story to these guys, huh? Anyway, the rest of the film is told to us through flashback as he's being dragged to the electric chair. Of course, most of the flashbacks Ajax wasn't there for and couldn't know anything about what actually happened during. I've heard of unreliable narrators before, but I think this might be the first example of an absent narrator. So our plot really begins when one of the owners of a security company is going to sell the entire company to a sleazy Bruce Campbell out from underneath his partner. These guys got names, but they're not in the movie for very long, and I don't really care. So I'm going to call them Mr. A and Mr. B. Now, Mr. A is going to sell the company out from underneath his partner, Mr. B. Are we all caught up? Excellent. Mr. B, though, finds out about Mr. A's plan and decides to solve it the only way he can. He looks up exterminators in the yellow pages, and the entry he finds is nice enough to mention that in addition to killing vermin and rodents and bugs and whatnot, they also kill men. I had no idea it was this easy to hire exterminators. Now I just gotta get a copy of the yellow pages. That is the most horrifying picture of their wife I have ever seen anybody possess. Dude, you better hurry your story up. There's like an hour left in this movie and you are minutes away from that chair. See, it turns out that while all of this plotting and shenanigans were going on, Ajax was actually busy installing a sound-operated security system in his boss's apartment building. This is the kind of thing you should mention at trial, because, see, there's video footage of you not killing people. Okay. To make sure that Ajax isn't present for the murder of Mr. A, Mr. B convinces him that, you know what, take some time off. Why don't you go out tonight and find yourself a wife? Yeah, that's an activity that can pretty much be knocked out of the way in one night.
Chapter 1, The Perfect Woman. Oh, well, of course the perfect woman's not just going to walk into my life.
How come this always works in movies? I mean, you see it all the time. Do you think... I'd have to make it believable, though. I mean, I'd have to really mean it. Because it wouldn't work if it was a parody. I'd have to really believe it. Because it's not like the dream woman of my life is just going to walk into my apartment.
Hey, Jeff, brought back your copy of Meet the Feebles.
Yep. That's about my life.
Excuse me?
What?
Oh, I thought you said something.
No?
Wow, we have it, folks. The most awkward moment ever captured between a man and a woman. Captured here on film. This belongs in a museum. Now, we get a heads up that a gigantic storm is coming into town. We see a newspaper headline. Apparently, the storm is so severe that the city is in chaos even before it strikes. Now, the film takes place in Chicago, so being in chaos could just be the default state of being, but can we take another look at that newspaper graphic real quick? Military seal off murder site, time-space disturbance discovered. Why can't I be watching that movie? And now we finally know what that thing chasing Ash through the woods was. And now we get our two killers. The two most obnoxious characters I can ever remember seeing in a movie. Every line of dialogue they speak is like spikes right through your ears, deep into your brain. I cannot emphasize enough how absurdly awful the two of these are.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
And so the killers kill Mr. A. Now, Ajax is down at a club and just so happens to be at the same club, because he overheard earlier, as his dream girl and Bruce Campbell, her boyfriend. Luckily, Dream Girl realizes Bruce kind of a dick in this movie. And so she ends up spending the evening having a, well, barely tolerable time with Ajax. After going down to check to see that Mr. A was really dead and then call the cops like, oh my gosh, I just found my partner dead, Mr. B is actually jumped by the assassins who kill him too. Then one of them turns to the other and says, hey, what if that was the guy that hired us? The other one says, well, then we call it a 2-for-1 special. The first one starts laughing and says, yes, that's what we'll do. That's what you get when you hire people out of the Yellow Pages instead of checking their Yelp rating. That's when one of the killers realizes that Mr. B's wife saw the whole thing through her binoculars that she's always looking out the window with, and now he's got to take care of that. There is one legitimately funny moment in this movie, and in the name of fairness, I'm going to share it with you here. The setup is that Bruce Campbell, when he left, stiffed Dream Girl on a significant bar tab, and scuttling together all the money they had, Ajax and Dream Girl were still $36 short. And so she's doing her whole, where am I going to get $36? How am I going to find $36? And just then, the leader of the band announces, we're about to have our big dance competition, and the winner gets $36. Of course, the two of them look at each other, and they decide to participate in the dance competition, and that's when the genuinely funny moment happens. Enjoy. Now we get 3 minutes of the killer trying to break into the building so he can go and kill this woman. all of which we get to see through the security cameras because they're sound activated and have a direct feed to her TV for some reason. So she's able to watch this guy coming to her. 3 minutes from him yelling up at her that he's going to kill her. And then she can watch him literally break down the front door, knock out some other guy, storm up, starts breaking down her door. She's got 3 minutes. She does not call the police. When he's finally about to break down her door, she picks up the phone to call somebody. And does not call the police. She calls the operator to tell her it's an emergency. This movie is not that old. I'm positive they had 911 in the 80s. I called 911 in the 80s. It must have been a thing. This is going to be one of those moments where I try to help you, the listener, the watcher. I'm guessing you're listening as well. I want to help you, is the point, because I have so few viewers. I want to keep all of you. So, if ever a large man yells up at your apartment or top floor window, yells at you that he's going to kill you, and then comes charging at you, destroying everything in his path, call the police as soon as possible. Also, if it's possible for you to be in a different location than where he last saw you, that would be a good move too. But at the very least, call the police, grab something to use as a weapon. Please. I'm worried about you. What follows is the most slapstick and over-the-top murder sequence ever captured on film. Do you doubt me? Yeah. Seriously? While she's struggling for her last breath of air because a man who's strong enough to rip up the carpet and yank it towards him or, break down doors can't manage to snap a neck, I'd like to take a brief moment and just look at this horrific storm that has the city in the grips of chaos. It's pandemonium out there. Okay, this is a little nitpicky of me, but you can actually watch this guy climb into the passenger seat of his car, which we saw in the cut right before that was full of stuff. He gets into the passenger seat of his car and then drives off. Did he have this car shipped over from England? And now we've got a wacky situation where one killer is trying to dispose of one of the many bodies that have been building up so far. Ajax is carrying his date back to her apartment in the same building that the two killers are in because she had such a horrible night. I guess she passed out. Is that a way to get out of bad nights? Because I've had a couple of dates. Anyway, that's not the point. She's had a mental breakdown. The other killer is kidnapping Mr. B's wife. I mean, he's killed several people leading up to this point. I don't know why he's not killing her, but he's bound and gagged her, so they're all right. Let the adventure commence. Luckily, Mr. B's wife manages to get away. We're never really shown how, and I have absolutely no idea why this woman is still alive. The woman does finally manage to elude the killer and accidentally ships herself to Uruguay. Yeah, that happened. I mean, ignoring the fact that somebody was shipping a gigantic empty box to Uruguay, nobody noticed that there was a woman in there. The top wasn't sealed on. She couldn't push her way out. They couldn't hear her moaning. At no point during the shipping process could she cry for help. Because what I'm guessing is the whole Uruguay thing is a way to explain that she wasn't at Ajax's trial, which we never see. She wasn't at Ajax's trial because she was shipped to Uruguay. Because all you'd have to do is ask her, hey, is this the guy that was killing everybody? No, I didn't see him at all that night. Ship her to Uruguay. I don't care. Look, we got 20 minutes left of this thing. I'm almost out. Meanwhile, Dream Girl's bad night continues because while hiding in her apartment, one of the killers falls in love with her and ends up chasing her. And to get away, she gets into a random car that happens to have one of the other dead bodies in it. So now she's driving this car with a corpse in it, and these two killers are trying to run her off the road. I've had worse nights, but not by very much. Now it's time for our hero to man up and save the woman. We've got like 15 minutes left in this movie, but we finally have a protagonist! These really are the most obnoxious killers ever. I miss having murderers with a touch of sophistication.
Talking of the Marquis, I wonder where he is. He's a little bit late, isn't he, Mr. Vandermeer?
Very late indeed, Mr. Croup. As late as he could possibly be.
From now on, then, we shall call him the late Marquis de Carabas.
Yeah. Or even...
You know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in Paris?
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
Oh man, they got the metric system. They wouldn't know what the a quarter pounder is.
And what do they call it?
They call it Royale with cheese.
But no. Instead of those, I get these jackasses. At least we have a hero worth 3/4 of a damn. When our epic speeding car fight finally comes to an end, the killers are probably dead, and Dream Girl is hovering off the edge of a bridge. Drama! But of course, it's never that simple, as the big, strong killer comes back for one last attack. The killer's finally disabled, I guess? Because, you know, they're not dead. The girl sort of saved, and the hero almost in one piece. I'd call this movie over. Oh, that's right. Hey, he just managed to tell an entire hour's worth of story in a couple of seconds. That's pretty impressive.
Hold it! Mr. Governor! Am I too late?
No, Governor.
Oh, thank God. I didn't want to miss this.
Are we sure this film isn't set in Texas? He keeps telling the guards that if they just find his dream girl, she could verify all of this, and the misunderstanding would be over, and everything would be fine. That's great for a movie, I suppose, but that's not remotely how this works. See, the guards working in the prison do not have the authority to not kill you. They don't have it. Doesn't matter if Jesus came back and said, no, look, I vouch for the guy, he's totally good. Doesn't matter. They don't get to determine your guilt or innocence. Their job is to fry you. Also, the average length of time between conviction and, you know, flipping the switch, or these days getting the injection, is 11 years. 11 years to track down Dream Girl, and if you hadn't tracked her down in that time, you weren't gonna. There's a throwaway line earlier in the movie where they say that it was a 2-week period from conviction to frying. 2 weeks. Wow. Okay. He still had a trial, though, and trials take time to set up and actually execute, so there should have been months there. And at no point anybody could have found the witness who says he wasn't there, or the security footage that actually captured the killers in the act of killing. Nothing like that. Whatever.
That man is innocent!
Nancy!
Seriously? So basically, she reveals that she thought that he had died in the river, and she was taken in by a group of nuns, and she was about to take a vow of eternal silence, as all the other nuns have done. This, despite the fact that she had a life. She had an apartment. Presumably, she had a job with which to afford that apartment. But she abandoned all of that to become a silent nun. Luckily, right before her vow of silence, she saw him on the news or in a newspaper that he was going to be killed, and rushed there to save him, and the nuns break their vow of silence, and he's saved, and everybody wins. The only reason this works is because the governor wanted a front row seat. So I'll let them have that, I suppose. I will. The governor can grant you a pardon. So, fine. This movie is beyond absurd. The jokes are as obnoxious as the characters, and it doesn't require a suspension of disbelief as much as it requires a murder and burial in a shallow grave of disbelief. I can see why the Coen brothers who wrote this and Sam Raimi who directed it does not want it on their resume at all. They are ashamed of this thing, and again, because I like to be fair when I wanna, apparently there was a lot of studio interference. And a lot of decisions were taken out of the hands of the creative people that should have had the power to make those decisions. So you can possibly blame a lot of this on that. Supposedly, it was this film that led the Coen brothers to decide that from now on, we direct our own movies, nobody else. So at least one good thing came out of this. This entire movie is just, it's an assault on the eyes and the ears. I've suffered through it, so you don't have to. You're welcome.
Thank you for watching WTF Cinema. Until next time, what the f***, man?